Why are we not more Jersey? When UK Brexited, why didn't we say, well, that just makes us even more Jersey than we've been before? We're not you guys, we're us. And we're going to trade with you, and we're going to trade with you, and we're going to make up our own rules. Gibraltar did it. Why did we not do it?
Is this one of the hardest time we ever been through in hospitality? In the past, I don't know, let's say 20 years. How
do I describe it? I mean, my father's Italian. I've grown up, with Italian food. It's like a minestrone of catastrophes. We're an hour boat trip from France. The fact that I can employ somebody from the Philippines easier than I can employ somebody from an hour on a boat is insanity. What would the island look like if the whole hospitality industry striked for a day? While the finance industry might produce the best profits, maybe the hospitality industry produces the best quality of life.
What are some of the key areas we should focus on in order to get this hospitality industry to a whole new level in the next decade?
And this is where I've changed my mindset over the last 6 months, is it's now for the private sector to take control. So it's now the industries need to come together and say, right, for us all to prosper and for this island to prosper and for our economy to grow, this is what needs to happen. And government, you need to deliver it.
Mr. Marcus Calvani, welcome to Hospitality Insights.
Thank you. Finally, right?
Yeah, finally. We made it. Yeah, we've been planning it for a while.
Do you know what? I've been meaning to come and do this for probably 18 months now. And amazing that this is now over 40 episodes that you've done. So congratulations on that. It's a massive success. I remember when we were on episode about 3 and we were saying, yeah, let's do this.
Yeah, and I know you're a busy man. I mean, you are the co-CEO of JHA Hospitality Association, doing an amazing job with your wife. We're gonna get into that in a minute. You're also running a few businesses, so I get it. You're one of the busiest men that I could get on the show. But we finally made it, and I'm really glad.
We're here. I'm happy. You've got a much fancier studio than when you first started going. So
I know
it's got to be.
It's better than on the sofa, right? Yeah, you've got to start somewhere, And I'm the kind of guy that doesn't want to try finding excuses. So sofa was available. We started with the sofa.
Look very comfortable. Graham Norton's done very well with the sofa, so don't worry about it.
Amazing. Actually, before the sofa was something else. I used to live in a different place. I was doing it in the kitchen, and I kind of enjoy that. But we had to leave that place, and now we're here, and I like this place. It's good. Okay, going to hospitality, because this is what we're talking about today. Is this one of the hardest time we ever been through in hospitality? In the past, I don't know, let's say 20 years.
Look, I mean, I think our industry, I think people in our industry are used to these huge waves. And, I referred to COVID as my third train wreck. So I remember graduating, I was at university in upstate New York at Cornell University doing hospitality management. And I graduated as 2 towers collapsed in New York City. And the economy tanked. And that was my first realization of this is nothing's easy in this world, and you can't take anything for granted. And so we went from the year before my graduation year getting huge payouts to go and sign their contracts and upfront money to take jobs to an almost impossible place to get yourself a job in the industry. And that was extreme overnight because of that terrorism attack. And that then picked itself back up, and then I found myself living in Orlando, Florida, in large-scale mixed-use hospitality developments. So we were working on Harry Potter Land at Universal, and we were working on Planet Hollywood Vegas. And suddenly Lehman Brothers went pop, and Lehman Brothers were one of the biggest financial backers of these mixed-use hospitality developments. So we went from something that was $6 billion of hospitality real estate development we were managing to 50 million overnight. So again, just a huge crash. And you have to keep recreating yourself in this industry. And during COVID, I sat down with our team and I said, I don't know what's going to happen. Are we going to be alive? Are we all going to be dead in 6 months? We don't really know. But I'm going to go down with you if we're going down, or if we succeed, we're all going to succeed together. So we didn't lay anybody off. We paid everybody full salaries, and we figured out what we needed to do to adapt to survive. Mm-hmm. And in hindsight, would I have done the same? Yes. Was it ideal? No. But the reality is, you do whatever you have to do in order to survive, and you recreate yourself. And I think our industry is all about that. If you look at the way that the consumer expects service level nowadays, you look at the way that the consumer reviews hotels, the way we shop, the way we book, the way we eat out, it's a very, very different world from 20, 30 years ago.
Right. Yeah. No, I get, and he's totally right from this point of view. But I guess the point I want to touch on is like I had quite a few chefs, restaurant managers, hotel managers, and they all talking about the increased costs. So this is one of the biggest challenges these days. Apart from like, it seems like staff is kind of getting in the right direction. I don't know now. It's kind of like mixed reactions. Yeah, I know. Yeah, you probably.
It's like a. I don't know, how do I describe it? I mean, my father's Italian. I've grown up, with Italian food. It's like a minestrone of catastrophes. We've got a staffing crisis post-Brexit, post-COVID. It's now easier to employ people from halfway across the planet than it is to employ somebody from Somalia. We've had to adapt to that. We've got a housing problem, so housing them is difficult. We've got a minimum wage that's about to push salaries through the roof. The cost of product has gone through the roof. The utilities have gone up. The rents have gone up. So everything has just become hugely more expensive. The actual spreadsheet standard business plan for a restaurant nowadays is completely different from the days when my father ran successful restaurants on this island. And the profit margins are just being squeezed and squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. And I think that's probably what you've heard from chefs and general managers is, how do we continue like this? You can't just continue to put up the prices. We suddenly become an island that outprices itself. And so then people can't afford to go out. People don't want to come and visit us. It all becomes too expensive. So what are the solutions?
Yeah, well, that's what a conversation which I had a few episodes back about Jersey as an island becoming unaffordable or not unattractive, because it's a beautiful place. That's a different conversation. It's unaffordable to come here and, enjoy what we've got here. So I think that's the biggest challenge. And obviously with that, all the other businesses, it's like a domino effect that they get affected because of this. If people are not coming to the island, then a restaurant has to suffer, a hotel and everything else. But a question that I want to ask, because probably people outside of hospitality, why should we care about hospitality?
Yes, I mean, it's a question we get all the time. And I think we are woefully uneducated about what our industry does on this island. And it stems the whole way through from education and higher education and lack of in our industry, through to just a misunderstanding of the skill sets that are required to be in our industry. The reality is, if you want a quality of life as an islander, whether you work in this industry or not, you need a thriving and vibrant hospitality industry. And that's not because you like to go out for a pint or because you like to go out for dinner. If you want to get on and off this island on an airplane or a boat, and you don't own your own plane and your own boat, then this industry is vital to that. If this industry fails and this industry goes away, there are a lot less planes and there are a lot less boats, and you can't go on and off an island. When you go out and grab your coffee in the morning, when you go and buy your sourdough bread, when you go out and meet friends for lunch, your co-workers for a drink afterwards, your staycation, going to the gym, going to the spa, it's all this industry. And so, if this industry packed up, you've got no taxis, no transportation, no airplanes, no boats, nowhere to eat, nowhere to drink, nowhere to hang out. It's a very, very boring, horrible island. And the reality is, what then happens is other industries go, I don't want to be here. We can go and we can set up a business somewhere else where the quality of life is better for our employees. And so other industries then fall off the edge of the cliff as well. So while it might not have the biggest GVA of all industries, and our government is fixated on measuring everything in GVA, and therefore everything is comparative on a spreadsheet. The reality is, if you don't support this industry, you don't grow it, and it's not vibrant, everything else plummets.
Yeah, no, totally. And I had this conversation with someone higher up from my company. I work for a finance company or for an IT and something that is a group. And he had exactly the same opinion. And I'm like, wow, not many people see it this way, because if you're from outside of hospitality, you're almost like, well, we do finance here, we don't really care, but we have a few restaurants, that's fine. So yeah, I guess there is an opinion probably in many, you hear it in many places, but hopefully people get it the right way.
We talked, it's an extreme move, but what would the island look like if the whole hospitality industry striked for a day? You know, what would everybody's day be like? You know, and what would the impact be? And I challenge anyone listening to this: wake up one morning and spend the day and just make a note of every time you come into contact or a contact point with the visitor economy. And it's not just the restaurants, it's the whole thing: the supply chain, the transportation, events, outside catering, the whole lot. It's one industry. And I think you'll find that during your week or your month or whatever it is, you come into contact with this industry hundreds of times.
You touch on visitor economy, and I know there is a project now, is ongoing as far as I'm aware, right? It's been already launched by the government to boost the tourism, boost hospitality and everything that, as you say, you know, it's a lot more than just this sector. How do you see this? Is it the right, is it being implemented right so far? You know, what are the expectations? You know, how is the direction we're moving with that program?
So Anna and I took over the JHA just over 2 years ago now. And around 2 years ago, the Visitor Economy Strategy Group was created. And so it was made up of government, ourselves, Chamber of Commerce, and a number of other entities to look at writing a new visitor economy strategy for the island. So we spent a year meeting every kind of once a month, and a strategy was released in December 2023, so right at the end of 2023. So it's been there more than a year now. The strategy document has got a lot of good stuff in it, but I kind of refer to it as a PG-rated version of what should actually probably have been an R-rated document. So the reality of the industry is there's some massive changes that are needed. Government needs to make some huge changes. The private sector needs to make some big changes. In the document now, it touches on those, but it doesn't actually tell you how to do that. It doesn't tell you what the deliverables are. So now we have a visitor economy group that meets kind of in charge of delivery. And there's 38 delivery points, and those delivery points have been split up, and we're responsible for some, and government, frustratingly, is responsible for a huge percentage of those 38 points. And the issue that we've got within government in our industry is it's hugely under-resourced. So there is one person in our government, that's in charge of the visitor economy. So you've got thousands of employees in our civil service, and there is one person that's in charge of our entire industry. And so when we need a law changed or when we need these deliverables done, she is the sole touch point that can actually make it happen. And we get on incredibly well with her. We've got a huge amount of respect for her. She's a very, very smart individual that's experienced on and off island in our industry. She's only got 2 hands, and there's only 24 hours in a day. And if we're going to take this industry seriously, then our government seriously needs to up the size of the delivery team in order to do these things, or we've just got a blockage. In contrast to that, the private sector has got to take back control. So we've had some meetings this last week actually, and it resonated a lot that in talking with Kirsten Morell earlier on in the week, he said to me, in the days when the first Chief Minister of Jersey was in charge, Frank Walker, the private sector ran this island and the government or the civil service worked for them. He said, we've now shifted and flipped that completely on its head. So now the civil service is writing the rules. They're overly regulating the island. They're in control. And effectively, the private sector is funding the civil service. So we've got to a stage where we are hugely and woefully underinvested and massively overregulated. And so consumer and business and entrepreneurial confidence is really down on the floor. It's very complicated to get on with business, and people aren't investing. And we've got to flip that fast right now. That's probably the most critical part of changing where our economy is as an island, not just for the visitor economy, but for other industries. We need to open that up. We need to embrace entrepreneurship. We need to champion entrepreneurs. We need to welcome people and get businesses up and running and encourage that kind of creative and passionate business ownership and leadership.
What's your relationship with the government? Because the way I see it, it's almost like pulling from 2 different directions. It's almost like, well, you want to be in relation with them because obviously you want things to work, but at the same time, when things don't go well, you need to say it, and you do say it. I've seen it quite a few times. So it's not like you don't hold back.
It's like the most complicated marriage you could possibly imagine. So there's no point in us. I think people who know me, they know that I'm passionate. I love this island. I'm entrepreneurial. I'm a risk taker. I'm a people person. But there's no point in sugarcoating what the government needs to know. And some of them like that, and some of them are very responsive, and some of them are completely not like that. And some of them don't like being told what to do. They're clinging on to their jobs. They're not interested in actually taking a risk or putting their name on something. And those are the real challenges, because we're not here. I'm not here doing this job to try and line my pockets. It doesn't line our pockets. I'm here to try and save an industry and grow an industry that has been woefully invested in for probably 3 decades, has been over-regulated by our government. The finger's been taken off the pulse by government as far as the importance of the industry. Our island is fixated in moving all of the eggs from one basket all to another basket. So we've gone from an agricultural island to a tourism island to a finance island. We don't seem to be able to balance our economy. And I think that that's what we've got to focus on, not just our industry, but all industries working collaboratively together to say, government, this is what we want. This is what we want you to deliver. You're the civil servants. You're there to deliver for the people. You're not there to make the choices and make the rules. And this is what Jersey needs to look like. And while the finance industry might produce the best profits, maybe the hospitality industry produces the best quality of life. And so we need to get that balance. And I think that's a bit of work that needs to be done now on what's the right kind of setup for Jersey? What's the right balance of industries across the island? How do we keep young people on this island? How do we get the birth rate going back up? How do we inspire young people to go away and then come back again and start up businesses? We've got some major economic challenges coming as an island. We've got a hugely aging bulge that's moving in this direction of retirement. And we've got a birth rate that's completely shrunk and young people that are leaving. So we've got a whole load of older people who rightfully expect to be looked after and cared for and nursed as they get older, but we've got nobody to do it. And then we're fixated on not growing our population. So who's going to look after these people? Are robots going to nurse the elderly? Are our elderly in the island going to accept to be nursed by robots? No, that generation's not, and they're not comfortable with it. So we've got to figure out, what do we do? How do we get people on this island? What can we automate? What can AI and technology take over? And actually, what skill sets and what jobs are needed for actual human beings to still be face-to-face and doing? And that's where our industry, I think, plays an enormous role going forward, because you can't automate all of our service. You can't automate the art of hospitality. It's a human interactive thing. And that's a big kind of switch on, value of employee, or the amount of, the value that a worker brings in on the island, and all these kind of economic measurements that we have. I think that they're wrong. They're historically probably worked, but I think they probably need to be relooked at.
Yeah, with the population in mind, what's the situation with work permits? What's the ideal situation? What would be the ideal situation? And where are we now? Because I hear this coming every now and then, with people, but we're spending I don't know how many months training them. So there's actually not that much left for having them fully working. So it's always been, I guess, the hospitality wants more. The government said, we're overpopulating the island. At the same time, who's doing the job is again pulling all directions. But how do you do? How do we do?
What I find really frustrating is the government's got endless amounts of data on everything, but it's really poorly put together, and it's so in silos. And one department doesn't talk to another department, and the data right. The reality is our population is shrinking. So the concept of overpopulation of an island, like we used to think, my God, there's too many people, it's all of the rest of it, right? That's gone at the moment. So post-Brexit and COVID, our population is dropping. Our birth rate is dropping. There are 1,000 less children between the age of 0 and 4 than the next age range up. These are red flag, serious problems. When that age range is shrunk by 1,000 islanders in one small age range, we've got a problem coming, right? So immigration is then fixated on not overpopulating the island and regulating who can come in. Now, by all means, there's got to be controls on who can come in. But at the same time, why is it that difficult? And I think the conversations that we have with them is, as an employer, I'm not going to go and employ 15 migrant workers that I can't afford to pay. When they come here, I'm responsible for their salary. Their salaries are high nowadays. We're talking about a minimum wage increase. It doesn't really impact that many people because we're over that as an industry. So the days of hospitality industry not paying well, that's a thing of the past as well. So you've got to take the responsibility of those people. So I'm not going to bring them in. I can't afford to bring them in. I've got to find them housing when I bring them in too. So as an employer, I want to bring in as few people as I possibly can and be as productive as I can as a company with as few people on my payroll as possible, because otherwise you can't make it work. So when I actually apply and I say I need somebody, it's probably because I need somebody. So then when you finally get the response back, no, you can't have them, you're then 2 or 3 months down the line of needing this person, and then you're really problematic because then you've overpushed your existing staff. They're overworking, or you've had to cut your business hours down, your revenues have gone down, the tax take to the island goes down. So it has this kind of compound impact. And obviously the people who supply you are not supplying as much, so they're making less. So it rolls on and on and on and on and on. I think the ideal world would be if we could employ people back from mainland Europe back into this island more easily. I think Brexit, that's probably another podcast, but there's all sorts of opinions on Brexit.
That messed up quite a bit.
Our island didn't have a vote. The reality is our island didn't have a vote, and we're far, far closer attached to mainland Europe than the UK is.
True.
We're an hour boat trip from France. The fact that I can employ somebody from the Philippines easier than I can employ somebody from an hour on a boat is insanity. Not only is it insanity, culturally, while a French person or a Spanish or an Italian or a Portuguese might not speak the same language, a European culture is far more similar. And so they're happier in general, or it's easier for them to settle here. There's less kind of helping them settle in or helping them change their lifestyle to get over the differences of home to Jersey. So, that's the ideal, and would be the kind of, the common sense approach. We're not there. So we've had to work on permits, and we've had to work on temporary permits, and we've had to work on what they call skilled visas. Now, I think they've now changed that word skilled, because I find it utterly offensive that you would claim somebody skilled and therefore somebody is unskilled. Because I can tell you, our kitchen porter, when you've got an event for 400 people, I'm very happily put a CEO of a finance firm in that job, and they would be out of the door in half an hour. I mean, it's, the reality is we've all got different skills. And so, what defines skilled and not skilled is a whole another debate. But we got a 9-month permit in hospitality, 9 months here, 3 months off. That works very well for seasonal businesses. There's not a lot of seasonal businesses. When you look at the visitor economy strategy, it's about growing tourism to our island through a 12-month period. So therefore, why are we creating 9-month visas or permits when actually we're trying to operate a 12-month industry? That doesn't make any sense. So those two things aren't joined. So we then got a rolling 1-year permit put in, but that then came back at the time that the amount of time that somebody spent on the island had to match the amount of time they spent off the island. So in you come, welcome to the business. I'm going to train you up. I'm going to teach you all of our recipes, or all of our service skills, or all of our thesis and ethos of a business, or how our point of sale systems work, or all the rest of it. And then after your 3 years, you're going to go away for 3 years. Well, if you do that, you're not going to come back, because you can't afford to sit around not working for 3 years. I can't afford to wait for you to come back for 3 years. So that's ridiculous. We're then investing heavily into training people, and effectively we become a training academy for other places, because we train them up and then they go and work somewhere else.
Yes.
So that's madness. We've now got a more permanent structure on a visa system, but the visa system then crosses into UK immigration, because we're under this common travel area. So while we can write our own permit rules as an island, we can't write our own visa rules. They sit under the common travel area visa. So there is then a list of what is deemed to be a skilled worker that the UK made up in 2020, and we have to follow as an island. So there's various things that might not fall in or might not tick the box, and suddenly you can't get your staff member approved. We have a very high-end hotel over here with an incredibly skilled member of staff. It's a role. I won't say exactly what role it is, but it's a role where you have to continuously train to get your certification. It's very difficult. There's not a lot of people with that certification. That person did their entire training in English. They are qualified in it. They're one of the most qualified people in that position within a hotel on the island. But they went to do their language test in order to get their visa approved, and were a couple of points off with the language test, didn't get approved, no visa, sent home for 3 months. So you've got a highly skilled individual that's failing at maybe not the speed or something to do with the language test, or maybe it was just a bad day, or maybe they were panicked because they were in an examination situation. That suddenly then the hotel hasn't got one of the most skilled employees in its team to be there because of it. And so there's no common sense about this stuff. It's all box ticking. It's all so regulatory. And, is that helping our island? No. Are we abiding by the UK laws? And are we effectively behaving like an immigration barrier for the UK? Yes. And I think a lot of conversation comes up at dinner parties, our industry, politicians. Are we too reliant on trying to be a bolt-on to Westminster? Why are we? Why are we not more Jersey? When UK Brexited, why didn't we say, well, that just makes us even more Jersey than we've been before? We're not you guys, we're us. And we're going to trade with you, and we're going to trade with you, and we're going to make up our own rules. Gibraltar did it. Why did we not do it? And I think we're in a situation where economically we'd be in a different world if we had made those bold moves at that time.
Yeah, it's a lot more complex than, it's first time we have this conversation that deep, and I hear so many new nuances, because from the outside, the chefs or even sometimes the restaurant manager, he only sees the very end part of the process, and he was like, why is it not working? And you explain it very well. So now we know what we're dealing with. Do you think this will ever be revisited and, improved? I mean, it's probably as best as it can be.
Hey, I mean, I'm going to bring up a topic now. We're on a podcast, right? So I'm in a room. Nobody in government can shoot me right now. We had long conversations last year, and in fact, I think I've probably been having a similar conversation for over 10 years in various different ways about what the government is very tactfully calling now a fixed link. But a fixed link actually is a bridge or a tunnel. The bridge, when I was at Cornell, I had a classmate whose grandfather built the bridge that connects Macau to Hong Kong. That's an enormously long bridge. Hugely expensive project, but it completely changed the entire economy of Macau. People can now drive from Hong Kong to Macau. Macau is full of high-end hotels and casinos. They spend exorbitant amounts of money. Macau's economy has flourished, and it's attached to Hong Kong. We spoke probably a decade ago about building a bridge to France. The reality is a bridge is an expensive thing to build, but suddenly the technology has changed in tunnels. And so last year we had kind of lengthy conversations about tunnels, and we brought some of the guys over from the Faroe Islands and Denmark who are tunneling experts. They came over to talk to the Chamber of Commerce too. And we had a dinner with them the night that they all arrived. And we put together some politicians and some individuals in the room. And I'd say some of them were really pro the concept. Some of them were very skeptic about the concept. But as soon as these guys started talking, the reality was actually building a tunnel is not complicated. And the bedrock under our sea between us and France is actually almost probably perfect. It needs some testing to do it. And so the cost between kind of Jersey to France is around the kind of, it's ballpark, but around the kind of £1 billion mark to attach La Colette to France. If you put a high-speed train in, and then they're not talking about that, they were talking about electric cars only, but if you put a high-speed train in less than 20 minutes, you could board a train at La Colette and you could be in France. Now, what does that do for us? That completely changes our economy of the island. So our supply chain changes, no longer reliant on boats bringing containers from the UK and on the sea being flat. Food and fresh produce can come straight in all the time from the whole of Europe. When you're eating pasta that you've bought on a supermarket shelf in Jersey, it's been made in a factory in the north of Italy. It's been trucked up to the north of France. It's probably been taken over through the channel into the UK. It's gone to London. It's probably been sorted or in a major city. It's then been trucked down to the south coast of England, that's been put on a boat, it's transported over to Jersey, put in a van, delivered to the supermarket, and then you purchase it. If we're so fixated as an island on carbon neutrality, why are we allowing these supply chains to exist when actually an hour away on a boat, we've got the continent? Why are we not bringing our food in from the closest neighbour that we've got? And the quality of product is exquisite. We all go to France, we go to the markets, we smell the delicious tomatoes, we touch the fruit and vegetables, we look at the charcuterie and the meat, it's right there, it's on our doorstep. And yet we're shipping stuff in from a lot further away. So your tunnel would bring that supply chain in. People could then work in Jersey but live in France. So
no more housing issue.
No more housing issue. So then when we need to nurse all these people as we're getting older, but we don't want to overpopulate our island, we don't have to. There is a solution there from that stage. You could have a reciprocal healthcare and a reciprocal education structure with them. The French have got one of the best healthcare systems in the whole of Europe. So, we've got opportunity there. A lot of people turn around and say, well, they wouldn't want to attach themselves to us. But the reality is that Normandy Peninsula actually needs economic growth, and they're quite keen to attach themselves to us. Guernsey is quite keen to attach itself to us. So suddenly what you could then do is Guernsey could be using our airport. The Normandy area that doesn't have an airport, that relies on Paris, could be using our airport. So suddenly we've got 110,000 people using our airport, would go to just shy of 1 million people using our airport. Suddenly our connectivity is amazing. So we might be able to have direct flights to all over the place because we've suddenly got a different demand. Now, we need to be able to have these conversations about a tunnel without people going, I don't like a tunnel. We're an island. We're not connecting ourselves to anybody. It's a ridiculous idea. Maybe it is a ridiculous idea. But the cost now is needed from government to test that seabed, to do a little bit more feasibility, and then green light the project or axe it. Either say it's impossible or it's okay. And if it's okay, it's not government and it's not the taxpayer that pays for these things, right? The Faroe Islands, who have got a tiny population compared to us, are now building their 5th tunnel. And the first 3 tunnels are completely paid for at €2, €2.50 each time you go through it as a user. And they were built 100% funded by American pension funds. So this is not the taxpayer, this is just an amazing benefit to the Faroese to be able to connect their islands. And the lady who's the head of Visit Faroe Islands that we spoke with, she said, I can go and see my mum now in 45 minutes, whereas it used to take me 5 hours. So she used to have to park our car, get on a boat, travel to another island and all the rest of it. And I think that's an opportunity that we've got to interconnect our Channel Islands and the surrounding area. And I strongly believe, and I've spoken about for years, if we're going to significantly grow our visitor economy, it needs to be visit the Channel Islands and the surrounding French peninsula. If we're going to attract Americans and Asians, they want to come and do the Normandy landing beaches, Mont Saint-Michel, a couple of nights in Jersey, off to Guernsey, and see that whole area, that kind of archipelago of islands. And we visit the British Virgin Islands, we visit the Cayman Islands, we visit the Bahamas. We don't visit just Tortola, or we don't name single islands. But for some reason, we've still got this crazy rivalry of Jersey versus Guernsey. And we've got Visit Guernsey and Visit Jersey. And we're both pumping taxpayer money in to try and steal tourists to come to one or the other island. And I mean, it's madness. And
every year it's like, who's the best island? Like Jersey was the best island this year. Next year maybe it's Guernsey and so on. Yeah. I don't know who makes these tops anyway, but yeah. I don't know what changes that much from one year to another. But what's our relationship with Guernsey? Do we have something like a Guernsey Hospitality Association? Yeah. Do they have? And have you been in communication with them?
We talk with them, absolutely. I mean, they've got some complex stuff going on in their visitor economy over there, and I think, dare I say, are we in a better situation? Are we in a worse situation? I don't know. They've got different challenges, and I think last year's and the beginning of this year's boat saga, I think, highlighted the fact that actually these two islands are a million miles apart from actually operating in any kind of normal way together. And what's sad, again, that's not private sector, that's government not working together. We've got businesses in Jersey that have the same business in Guernsey. We've got hospitality businesses with owners here and there. We've got finance businesses here and there. We've got law firms here and there. The private sector can do it. The government can't. For some reason they can't, and they don't work together, and they don't want to work together, and it's extraordinary. And so we're now stuck in a situation where we've got two boat operating companies in one small chunk of islands.
What's the challenge with that? Because I can see like where you're heading with this, but I can see quite a bit of a problem now in terms of even connecting Guernsey to Jersey now with the ferry.
Is it ideal? No, it's not ideal. Have we got a good boat operator? Yes. Did we have a good boat operator? Yes. Condor had its moments. But at the same time, it had been with us for 60 years. And I think, islanders are very quick to get on social media and say, oh, my boat trip was cancelled.
You only hear about the bad stories.
Was 10 minutes late, therefore they're a terrible company. Well, they've been transporting you for 60 years. And so I think, if we remove ourselves from the two companies, it's not ideal to be having two separate companies. People will argue that there's benefits, but the cost savings are not there. And we're now dealing with the inter-island has got to be sorted out. As an industry, we're focused on growing Visit the Channel Islands and actually Visit Jersey. I've been working quite closely with Visit Guernsey. But you can't quite easily get between the islands. And so until you can get between those islands, that's just not something that's going to happen. And I hope in my conversations in the last week with the team at DFDS, they're now talking actually with Brittany Ferries, and now Brittany Ferries and the government have parted their ways of all the legal stuff. It'll iron itself out. And I think, will that look the same in 2 years' time than it looks now? No. I think there's going to be constant progression in what happens with boats in the Channel Islands. But, I'm confident that we've got a good company. They are very receptive with us. They're working very closely with the association. They talk with our board. They talk with us regularly. They've got a lot to learn about Jersey and the Channel Islands, but they're very open about that.
Yeah. And they have a huge history behind it. It's not like an overnight.
No, they're an enormous company with an enormous skill set in operating boats. They know nothing about the Channel Islands, and they'd be the first people to tell you that. We can operate a boat, we can give a great service, but we need you to tell us what does this island need? What's the industry need? What do other industries need? They need to talk too, and so we're kind of work in progress.
Yeah, curtain was squeezed quite badly with that by press, by people, but I think in the end it was the right choice, considering from what I heard. I don't know that many details, but the financial problem that Condor is going through, apparently, that's what I heard at least. That's probably the best option from what people say in the end. And it wasn't the nicest situation to be in. Yeah,
I think we weren't involved, so I think we were not privy to any of the tender process. I think in hindsight, and I don't know, I haven't spoken really that much with Kirsten about it, but would they have done that tender process the same now? Probably not, or I hope not. Previously when Condor were first selected on a tender, there was a group, and part of that group was made up of the JHA, was sat there at the table. And so, why, when you're going through that tender, are the farmers not there, and transportation companies and the hospitality industry and the tourism Visit Jersey and government? Those boats play a big role in not just transporting people, but goods, and not just bringing people to the island, but taking us off them. And so there needs to be representation from the industries. And there wasn't. There was no representation from the industries. There was no communication or any kind of gathering of information as to what those industries wanted. It was entirely done by government. And, I think, have we ended up with a good result? I hope so. Should we possibly have been involved in the process during it? I think it probably would have helped. If nothing else, it would have helped a better understanding of the community as to what was going on and more transparency in it. And I think, even if it had gone wrong, at least then everybody would have known why had it gone wrong, and why did we need to redo it, and why did we need a second tender and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm more of a fan of transparency in these types of processes. As far as the JHA is concerned, we run a very, very open book, very transparent association now. We've got an incredible board that we've built over the last year. We've got what Malcolm refers to as the A-team of the industry. We've got separate subsectors. They've all got their own communications back to there. Every single member has a voice. The communication flows freely. It goes back to government if it needs to, that nothing's sugar-coated, nothing's hidden. It is what it is. And I think, that's what you want as a business owner. That's what you want as an islander, knowing the reality and knowing transparency and having confidence that what you're being told is what it is.
I just want to take a moment to tell you that if you are struggling to manage your social media for your hospitality businesses, you are not alone. At True24FPS, we are not just producing content for the sake of doing it. We are focusing exclusively on Jersey's hospitality industry, and we are turning your followers into loyal guests. Your attention as a hospitality business owner, manager, or head chef is leading staff, focusing on day-to-day operations, and also maybe changing menus and other things that are day-to-day challenges. But you don't have time for social media, which is still a critical part, but it just falls behind. So leave the social media and content creation side for us, because this is what we specialized in, so you can focus on what you do best. And now back to the episode.
Yeah, let's talk more about Jersey Hospitality Association, because I think it's an important way of communicating to the government, and having a voice is something that you always talk about. How would you sell this to, let's say, a new hospitality business that, they don't really know what it's about, they're thinking about it? Why should they be in the association?
Sure. So when I came back to the island in 2010, and so the JHA started in the 1950s, and it started as the Jersey Hotel and Guest House Association. And it was always very focused, understandably, as what it said on the tin, on hotels and guest houses. In the very late 90s, early 2000s, they renamed it the Jersey Hospitality Association and brought in restaurants and food and beverage establishments into the association, understanding the fact that actually it was more about industry, and the industry was more diverse than just the accommodation side of it. We came back to the island 2010. I was co-opted onto the board by the then president of the association. It was Robert Jones from JP Restaurants. And there was a board there of very, very experienced, I think, all men minus one. So it was a very male, very suit-wearing, quite mature crowd. I felt like the naughty schoolboy in the room. But the sole focus back then was that they wanted a public-private partnership marketing entity for tourism. So Jersey tourism used to be part of government. The industry had become unsatisfied, and it was Jersey Hospitality Association's job to create something different. So fast forward a few years, Visit Jersey is created as a result of that. And then those guys said, look, our job's done. We've now employed a CEO to Visit Jersey. At the time, after the first year of Keith Beecham coming in, our decline for decades of tourism numbers had turned, and it was on the rise. And these gentlemen said, look, we've given loads of free time to this. We don't need to do it anymore. It's the end. We shut down the association. We've done our job. And I remember I was actually in Florida at my wife's family's home in Florida. And I got this message and I thought, okay, maybe we've done it. But something didn't sit well with me on it. And I just thought, if we've created Visit Jersey, whose sole job in that moment was to market our island off our island, bring people here, you're a marketing entity. Who's here on island to debate with government and lobby government about our industry? Who's here on island to grow a love for our industry on island? Who's here to connect with schools and bring the industry together? There isn't anyone. So I actually sent a message from Florida to Keith Beecham, who was the CEO of Visit Jersey at the time. And I said to him, Keith, is there any reason for the JHA to continue to exist? Or now you're up and running and you're doing a great job, do we shut it down? And he responded back really fast, saying, absolutely, you've got to exist. My job is to make people love Jersey off Jersey. Your job is to make people love Jersey and your industry on island. So I was left pretty much on my own. We then brought in a couple of other members onto the board. We had Fiona Curley from the Omeru. We had Natalie Duffy for Salty Dog. Amazing. There were now ladies and younger ladies on the board. Different perspective. We then rebuilt a board. The whole thing kind of changed in its mentality. And fast forward a few more years, we then ended up employing in a manager in there. And I left the board after 9 years of being on the board, and kind of went away for 4 or 5 years. And then this position came up. And Anna was working for our group as well, but she was also working, I think for the second time, for the back to work scheme at government and social security. And when COVID had happened, they called her up and they said, you need help, we need to get people back into industry and you understand the hospitality industry. So she would do both jobs. And the unemployment numbers had dropped again. And she was kind of like, I want something else to do. And this job came up and I said to her, why don't you do that job? You could do that job. She said, no way, I'm not doing that job. And I said, well, why? You've got a degree in hospitality management. You understand this island now. You understand the government now. You've got huge experience. You've got a big network. It's perfect for you. And she said, I refuse to talk to media and I refuse to talk to politicians.
And that's where you come in.
So I was like, oh, okay, fine. And then she looked at me and she kept looking at me and I thought, okay, I know where this is going. And so I kind of looked at her and I'm like, no, we work 7 days a week together on everything. I'm like, I just thought that was a good idea for you, and you've managed to somehow go, hey, how about both of us do it? So, okay, do I mind talking to media? No. Do I mind talking to politicians? No. Do I not like doing some of the stuff that she does? Absolutely. So actually, as a team, we're really used to working together, and we do it really well, and we've done it ever since we met. Actually, we met working together pretty much. So it's always been like that, and. We went and we pitched ourselves for the job, and we walked in there and we said, we're pitching ourselves as co-CEOs. And the team from the board that were interviewing looked at us like we were nutters. And I remember one of them said, what on earth is a co-CEO? And I said, I've got absolutely no idea, but Samsung's got one. Or two, actually, for that matter. So I said, look, we'll split the job. I said, as far as the work contract's concerned, it might be a bit weird, but we'll split the job. And actually, you will end up with 2 for 1. And what we will do, because I think we're incapable of not doing it, is we will treat this association as a business like it belongs to us. And we will make sure that we figure out how it's got longevity. And so we took over a pretty sick association. So it was on its knees financially. It had less than 6 months left to go from a finance standpoint. Its membership numbers had dropped quite a lot. It probably didn't have the political abilities that we've now got, and it wasn't really being listened to that one. It lost its way a little bit. And so we again kind of said, right, if this was ours, what will we do? We need to restructure the board. We need to restructure the association. We need to, most importantly, figure out what is needed for an association on Ireland now. And if we've got more members, what do those members need? And what's the value that they're going to get from paying a membership? Because if you've got no value, don't pay your damn membership. And I tell people now, if you don't think you get value, stop paying. Call us up, figure out, and if you've genuinely engaged and tried to get value out of it and you haven't, then don't pay me. Don't pay the association, because I think we have figured it out. And I think we created a completely new structure. There's now multiple different subsectors. So if you're a beach cafe, or if you're a Portuguese restaurant, or if you're a 5-star hotel, or if you are a private airline company, you have your place. And everybody has a voice, and everybody has their own meetings that meet what works for those subsectors. So the hoteliers like to, meet in more formal environments, and some of them wear suits and ties, and they have a good chat, and then they have a glass together afterwards. The restaurateurs don't like to do that. They like to meet in a completely different way. And actually the attractions and recreation guys, they go off and experience each other's attractions and businesses. So it's wonderful to see them all doing what they need to do. Anna and I don't need to micromanage these people. We've got a board of way more experienced people than we are in each of those subsectors. So we're surrounded then by a board that comes back together, and I can genuinely sit there at the end of a board meeting knowing that we've got a good idea of what does our industry need and what does it want and where are the problems. And it bothered me that government kept on saying to us when we started, well, what's your industry think? I'm like, well, a hotelier compared to a wholesale food supplier, compared to a private airline company, probably all think completely different things. But unless I can get that data and I can get that actual reality of what they're saying, then I can say to government, well, actually, restaurateurs think this, but hoteliers think that. And that's the impact that you're going to have on the recreation side of our industry, and that's the impact that you're going to have on the accommodation side. And now governments finally, I think, after 18 months, 2 years, realized that actually the visitor economy or the hospitality industry is completely different from what they used to only refer to as the word tourism. And so that bothered us intensely. It was tourism, 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 tourism. Tourism is only the inbound people that are coming to our island. When you and I go out for dinner, or you and I go and use our industry, that wasn't being measured in the world of tourism. And so now the government refers to it as visitor economy. So we've made progress in that. We're up 40% memberships. The fees went up because they had to. They hadn't done for a long time. And I'm really proud to say that actually, as of the beginning of this year, for the first time in 15 years, the association is no longer making a loss. So we've got a good future. It's turned around. We've employed another full-time member in. So Georgie Dodd has joined us as an engagement development manager. She's got a massive calendar of incredible events that are now being put together that we had visions to do, but there was only two of us. So there's one job effectively that Anna and I split. One salary, one load of hours. And while we were battling government and writing visitor economy strategies and playing with immigration and all that kind of stuff, we couldn't do all of the events that we wanted to do as well. So now Georgie's in there and we can actually roll out a load of the stuff, and it's super exciting where we are from that standpoint as well. So I hope from members they're going to get way better value. They're going to be engaged in the fun things, networking events, all that kind of stuff. We unfortunately have still got to take the brunt and go and bash heads against the table and work with government or against government or whatever role we're playing that day in order to try and push our industry and our economy forward.
We have quite a few people from hospitality listening to this. I mean, I know some of them are on YouTube, some of them are just watching the short clips or on the audio platforms. Talk about why is this important to be a pay membership? Because I see why. Because obviously you want to be an entity on your own. You don't want to depend on the government. If you want to say something, you want to stand on your own feet. Is that, or is there more to it?
Look, I mean, our motto as an association is stronger as one. The reality is you can go and try and fight your battles on your own, but actually your time is far, far more useful if you're focused on running your business. So people open their business because they're passionate about their business. The things that we help them deal with, nobody in their right mind is passionate about fighting with immigration or dealing with all of the stuff that comes. So we're there as your safety blanket from that standpoint. We're there, pick up the phone, hey Marcus, hey Anna, I've got this problem, what do I do? We're not giving you our own opinion on it. We've probably dealt with 20 or 30 people that have experienced that problem already before. We know who the contact points are in government or wherever in order to help you. We know what the process is to do it. So we're also there to distill and translate the insanity that government writes. I mean, the bureaucracy and the rules that they write, you've got to be a lawyer to understand a lot of this stuff. And we sit there and we scratch our heads and we sit there as a board and we try and figure it out. And half the time, they don't even tell us that they're changing things. So we're constantly checking, and we've got multiple people who check, and we've got a comms guy who does all of the communication stuff. So there's a big structure there that's there for you as a member, so that you won't miss out when some rule changes or some tax changes or some policy changes. We'll let you know. And all you need to do is open up your newsletter and go, okay, well, that's easy. I've read 2 sentences, as opposed to getting yourself in trouble or fined or discovering it when it's too late. We do all sorts of stuff. We go and do the planning, panel appeals processes. We go and sit with banks. We do, I don't know, all sorts of things. We deal with help people with their HR issues. It's vast, as well as trying to tie, and I think our passion is tying multiple island industries together. So, our agriculture industry should be working really closely with our hospitality industry. And actually, when we eat local and we eat seasonal and we eat healthy, that impacts our healthcare industry. And so we've tried to kind of tie that all together. We did it with Delicious and Dine Out. There's a big focus there. The expansion of that this year is into 2 food festivals, a land-based festival in spring, a seafood-based festival in autumn. And what's amazing is we're now sat around a table in government with their arts and culture, their agriculture, their visitor economy department all going, we all want part of this. We all want to financially support it, and we realize that it benefits all of our sections. So that's great. We're, at the end of the day, we're 9 by 5 with 100,000 people. We're not a metropolis. We need to be working far more village mentality, everybody coming together.
What are some of the actions you touch on the food festivals? And I think, that definitely, Tennerfest is not a thing anymore. You guys took over with what you've done. And I think it's amazing. As far as I know, all you have to do is to be a member.
Yep.
So again, a benefit.
If you want to, a benefit. So what you used to pay I don't use the T word as you just said, but I think you used to pay, that entity, that price-driven food festival was created and is owned and operated by a Guernsey-based marketing company, not by anybody on island. So you would pay, I think, at one stage about £600 as a restaurant to be part of that for that 6-week period, and that was money going straight to a marketing company in Guernsey. So that, I think, if nothing else, changed when we created Dine Out. And what we wanted people to do was focus on local and try and get that connection between the small grower and the amazing product that we've got on island onto the plate in the hospitality establishment, so that locals could enjoy it and visitors could enjoy it. And we can all celebrate local.
Well, because part of that was to use local.
You've got to use local. So you've got to have a starter. If you've got a set menu, a starter, a main course, and a dessert in your menu has got to focus on a local ingredients in each of them. But it's completely free as a JHA member. Yes. So I think a small business into the JHA at the moment is about £360 a year. So £360 a year, you get your 12-month membership and you get the value of what apparently was £600 worth of value from that. So without doing anything else during the year, you're already up just by doing that. Now, I hope that people engage far more. So if you are a restaurant, come to the restaurateur subsector meetings, sit with other restaurateurs, talk to them, because we have had amazing conversations about point of sale systems and taking credit card deposits that wasn't possible. We changed it. Our chair of our restaurant subsector worked with some tech companies and some credit card companies in Jersey to tie it so that you now can take a credit card as part of a reservation on an online system. That wasn't possible before that conversation came up. They're talking about allergens, and this is a big thing for the restaurateurs, and helping each other. So we've got some restaurateurs who are absolute specialists in allergens. So use them and talk with them, and they're there to help you to get your restaurant up to speed when you might really be struggling with it. So again, it's about working together, and if everybody works together, we build a much, much more resilient and a much, much more vibrant industry.
What I want to get with this, so this is one thing, the food festival, and I think it's something you should definitely be proud of, with the entire team that we put this together. Are there other things that, since you took over, we're like, I'm really proud of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are probably many, but what are the ones you're most proud of?
So I think I personally am most proud when I sit down at our board meetings and I look around the table, because we've got an unbelievable board. And to sit down and actually kind of register, we were in a really bad place 2 years ago. This association wasn't really at a point where we knew whether it had any kind of longevity or whether it had any reason or whether it could financially exist. To have turned it round into breaking even or even potentially profit making, to now doing multiple events a year, 40% up in membership, and a board that's at that caliber, that for me, and I think for Anna, is a moment where we think, okay, our efforts and the hours that we've put into this have paid off. And I don't even know what we're contracted for. It's probably 40 hours a week or something. We're entrepreneurs, so we don't understand that whole world of contracts. But
whether it's Saturday or Sunday,
we don't do that. So we've been, I think, hand on heart, we can say we've never had a week other than when we've been on holiday where we haven't done more than 100 hours in a week for the JHA. But at the same time, it's because we love this industry. And so it's kind of a hobby and a passion at the same time as being a job. But trust me, there's sometimes when it's not a hobby and it's not a passion, but
you still have to do it.
We still do it. And so that's turned itself around. So I think from our standpoint, we're really proud on that. From a membership standpoint, I think now having that subsector set up is revolutionary, game changing. So I think previously, if you'd been a little beachside cafe, it's probably pretty intimidating to bring up your problems in front of somebody who might own 3 or 4 hotels and is a big player in the industry. Now you've got your own communication path, and you can sit with your own people and you can chat about things. So you've got all those benefits, and you've got that flow of communication back. We've made some major changes for industry that frustratingly, even our non-members still benefit from. So blocking increases in duty, for example, whether you're a member or not a member, you've benefited from the fact that we've gone out and we've done that. Your work permits and your visas, that's because we've gone out there and we've done that. Your housing regulations and stuff, it's because we've done that. So take a little moment and realize that actually, if I employ a migrant worker and I sell alcohol, probably it's my responsibility that I should be a member anyway. These people are working to make me run a more efficient business and help me with my business. So there's a little sentiment of kind of, maybe it's a responsible tax to be a member. We've also changed the pricing structure so that it's affordable. So it's 30 quid a month if you're small. If you're big, it's 4,500 a year. So, there is a big difference in the size of the business and what you pay. So I think we've tried to make it fair. And again, like we talked about earlier, it's about transparency. And so, we're there for anyone. We have our mobile all the time. I know I'm not even supposed to use my personal mobile for it, but people call me all the time. The media call me all the time. I'm on the radio in the morning at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Well, I see quotes of you like in every publication. It's like, well, this is what Marcus said. I'm like, again, like, where did you find that?
That's a responsibility. I don't mind talking to media. Yeah. I'm quite comfortable on camera. Yeah. I'm quite comfortable, but I don't really like it. I certainly don't really like the difficult conversations, but that's part of the job. That's what I've got to do. And if I don't do that, I'm letting down our members. And if we don't have a voice, and I think people do, like you've just said, I see you all over the place. That doesn't really give me a kick, but actually that's my job. And that's the JHA being seen all over the place. And that's every single one of our members being listened to and being seen all over the place. And that's what I've got to do. And, so I do that. And Anna avoids the media and avoids the politicians. And, I deal with that and I take the hits when I need to.
What are some of the key areas we should focus on in order to get this hospitality industry to a whole new level in the next decade?
Interesting. So,
it's probably another hour of conversation, but if we can summarize it somehow.
Do you know what? I've changed my opinion on this hugely in the last 6 months. So I believed when we were working on the visitor economy strategy that we all need a Northern Star, right? Unless we all know where we're going as a visitor destination, then how can we expect anybody to invest into it or get behind it? So again, this kind of stronger as one mentality. I was, and I still am, pretty opinionated on the fact that actually government needs to do quite a lot to make that happen. But actually at the same time, I now think government does too much. And I think the interesting part was, as we said before, of this kind of concept of the private sector running the island and the civil service working for them, as opposed to the civil service running the island and the private sector funding it. We've got to switch that back around. And so we as business owners are responsible for making that change. And we as business owners need to start telling government what we want, not complaining that things aren't working and we want change. We need to say, we want this to happen and we want it to happen by that point. So I think it's about now, we've actually as an association this last week brought together all island industries into one meeting. We had it yesterday. No government, no civil servants, no media, no arm's length entities. It was a representation of all the different industries in the island. And we sat down and we said, look, we're worried. We're worried about where's this island going? What does it look like in the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 50 years? We're not going in a good way. You've got, Malcolm says, January the 2nd, JEP News, economy's back to where it was pre-COVID. 2 days later, 1/3 of households in Jersey can't afford to live. It's broken, right? It doesn't take a genius or an economist to say that is broken, that doesn't work. And is the economy back to where it was pre-COVID, right? It only is because banking interest rates are high. So that skews it out of whack, and actually it doesn't trickle down, and people aren't better off, and people are struggling. And even when you're making a decent salary, it's still seriously hard to pay those bills. And our mortgages have all gone up, and the cost of food has gone up, and all the rest of it. And we're not in a good place. And so how do we change that? And what is right for Jersey? And is it about measuring an economy in a traditional economic GVA way like that? Or actually, do we need to say, well, the finance industry is great, makes a load of money, it's cool. But actually the hospitality industry is what creates quality of life. So
focus on that.
Do we need to go, right, well, we need the money, but we also need quality of life. And actually we need agriculture because we want our own export products. We want to eat local and all this kind of stuff. So how do we bump that one up? And what is that right balance for Jersey's economy? It's not about growing the economy. It's about growing the economy in a diverse way that works as far as that recipe for what's good for Jersey and good for islanders. We don't have that. So we can read the government's future economy strategy. I've read it. I've read it 4 times in the last week, painfully. It gets it. It understands there's a problem. There's this aging bulge. There's not enough people working. You've got to be more productive, all the rest of it. But actually the reality is, what do we want for islanders? How are we going to keep kids here? How are we going to make it a really cool place to invest and work and educate yourself and stay and marry people and have babies and grow again? And that's what we need. And it's not about the finance industry doing really well. That's a nice thing. But actually, if we measured, and this is one of my favorite ones, the Kingdom of Bhutan, this is an extreme opposite. The Kingdom of Bhutan has a gross national happiness index. And that's how they measure things. And so if you put on a planning application, it's got to score highly in the gross national happiness index or it doesn't get approved. So, okay, so let's take Jersey and let's start measuring things on gross national happiness. Probably going out for dinner and going to the spa and whatever, having a glass of wine, all these things, they score pretty high on happiness, right? Probably going to work and on a spreadsheet in a finance office probably doesn't score that high on happiness. I might be wrong. Some people might love it, but let's just go there with it. Now, the finance industry will score really high on GVA. The hospitality industry and agricultural industry probably score low. We do score way lower. But on happiness, we probably score a lot higher than the finance industry. So actually, are we measuring things correctly? Or should we be setting specific measurements for specific industries? And again, I think we need to figure out, what is Jersey? What does Jersey need to be? And it's not all about money. It's about quality of life. It's about everybody being able to live a good quality of life. It's about being able to go out. You want to be able to afford to go out and eat out and have a drink. You don't want to have to binge drink and preload on alcohol that you bought duty free or 2 for 1 because you can't afford to have a glass of wine when you go out for dinner. I mean, that's insanity. It's again broken. So we need to fix some of those bits in order to get there. And I think the only way of doing that now, and this is where I've changed my mindset over the last 6 months, is it's now for the private sector to take control. So it's now the industries need to come together and say, right, for us all to prosper and for this island to prosper and for our economy to grow, this is what needs to happen. And government, you need to deliver it. And the industry will deliver it. And the reality is, I think with government is you need to deregulate, you need to get out the way, you need to probably be half the size that you currently are. You do too much.
Be an enabler, and that's it.
Enable, don't regulate. And I think that is got to be a big twist. And I think that's an uncomfortable conversation, particularly to have with civil servants, because that's their jobs. But I think the reality is that there's lots of jobs out there that civil servants could be doing in other industries. And so, we have just grown our civil service bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And is it more efficient? I would say probably not. When you've got the civil service then telling the private sector you've got to be 7% more efficient by 2030 or our quality of life is not going to be there, but yet they continue to employ more and more and more and more people and make more and more regulation, that's a little hypocritical to me. So
you've
actually,
got to be an example yourself before you ask.
Exactly. So I think that's going to be something that we hopefully see, and I hope that the new government CEO agrees with that approach. And I think we need to be, utilizing and embracing things like AI into government and saying, actually, these physical jobs don't need to be physical. They can be done now in an AI.
Especially admin stuff like now can
hugely.
be removed. Like
And I talk about this when I go to schools all the time. I say to school kids, AI is the most amazing thing, and if I was you, the most terrifying thing at the same time, because your teachers are teaching you skill sets that AI can do better than you. And your career advisors are telling you or advising you to go into jobs that actually probably a computer will always be better than you at. So right now, you guys are in a really interesting place in your lives where we don't know what AI is about to do. I didn't even know what the word AI was when I was at school. So we've gone in a huge difference. But don't choose a career that a computer can be better than you at, because you don't stand much chance in winning. And especially when you have a bad day or you've got a hangover or you get a bit old, they don't. And they work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. So, be aware that actually maybe that admin job, or maybe that office job, maybe that spreadsheet job or whatever it is, you can easily be replaced by a computer. And I have conversations with a bunch of friends in different industries saying, actually, we could probably remove 5%, maybe I can remove 75% of my workforce through AI, and it'll always do it well, and it will never mess up, and it will do it 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. That's a really worrying thing. As a father of a 12 and a 10-year-old, where is the education system going? And is the education system in alignment with actually what's the jobs that are going to be there when these kids come out of school? And I think you look at our industry, yes, there are robots that can change bed sheets now, but if your corridor is not 100% flat, you can't get the robot to the hotel bedroom. Yes, there's chef arms that can cook, but actually they can't create the recipe. So the creative stuff and the problem-solving stuff still hasn't been fixed by the computers and by AI. And I was talking to an architect the other day, and actually all of the documentation, the drawing sets, the working with local laws and bylaws can all be done by a computer. But the creative part of designing a building can't be done by them. So actually, all of the skills that they're teaching architects during a 7-year degree, a lot of that can now be automated. But the creative part, maybe the kid that's dyslexic and got ADHD that wouldn't qualify in the maths class in order to get to the degree, actually maybe that kid's the most creative thing ever. And it can use AI and computers to create incredible buildings. So there's a big educational twist with jobs. And I think our industry, if anything, is going to become stronger because it can't be automated that much.
It relies a lot on people.
Exactly. And the back office part can be quite a lot.
True.
But
it's probably first time in years when the white collar jobs are more affected than you can say so-called blue collar, which again, we're getting in a situation where it's probably a gray area in between and probably shouldn't be separated that way. But if you're in the office, then brace for impact.
I think even with our industry, we now accept lots of places. We go into a restaurant, sometimes we can order with an iPad, and we might not have any contact with a human being until they bring the drink over to the table. In the right environment, we accept that, and it can be efficient. But if I go away for a weekend, unfortunately I can't afford to do it, but if I did go away for a weekend and to a 5-star resort, I don't expect to order my drink and my dinner with an iPad. I expect a waiter to come over and give me incredible service and hospitality and talk to me about the produce and where they're from and where I'm on holiday. That can't be replaced by a computer. So, we can become more efficient as an industry. We can automate some things.
I guess that has its place in like an airport, for example, hotel, where you just stay a night and you don't really care.
Exactly. But I mean, if you told your parents and my parents that you could check into a hotel by unlocking the door with your phone, and they would tell you which room you're going to, and you can unlock your room, and you would never come into contact with a human being the entire time, they would have thought you were insane. You can do that nowadays. And actually, you can do that in quite high-end hotels too. Anna and I stayed in a hotel in Cologne in Germany a year ago. It was a nice hotel. The room was amazing. The quality of the hotel was amazing. But I think we saw one employee the entire time we were there. It was all automated. Wow. And it was slightly weird and quite cool at the same time. But again, it's about the right place and the right setting for that type of service. And some of it can be automated and some of it can't. And I bite back with government quite hard for our industry because there's this fixation on productivity and automating and technology. And I say to them a lot of the time, we're probably one of the industries that you're going to see the least change to being replaced with AI and that kind of stuff, because like healthcare and nursing, I want to be nursed by a human being. And yes, I'd like an iPad at my house that if I'm not feeling that well, I can press a button and up comes a doctor. That's great. But actually, when I need physical interaction and nursing, I want a human being. I don't want to be dealt with by robots. So, it's a really weird world we're living in right now, I think.
Marcus, I really enjoyed this conversation, and I want to let you go because you've got many other things to do. Although today is a Saturday, I'm sure probably this is not the end of the day in terms of work. You might get some phone calls soon about hospitality issues. But before you go, where can people find you in case they need any support from you or Jersey Hospitality Association? Where are you most active on social, whether the association itself or you?
Yeah, so I'm in jerseyhospitality.com. Our email is ceo@jerseyhospitality.com. So that comes through to Anna and myself. If you email us, we will respond. If you're a member, we'll respond even quicker. Georgie is there as well, but again, through the website. We're on LinkedIn a lot. We're on Facebook a lot. We're on Instagram. So we're there, and we're hopefully are very easy to contact. They're on the website as well. There is a mobile number. The mobile number comes literally through to either myself or Anna is holding that phone 24 hours a day. So we are there to be contacted. If you're a kid and you're listening, and I hope you're a kid and you're listening, email me. So email me. I've got all the time in the world to try and inspire you to go and work in our industry. And some of the best stuff that I do through the year actually is with the kids in schools and inspiring them that actually this is not about a non-skilled minimum wage industry. Richard Branson, Jamie Oliver and Gordon Ramsay are pretty rich people. They've all made their money in our industry. Baron Hilton and Bill Marriott, they're not poor either. This is not an industry that's just about minimum wage. There's huge international opportunity to really do well, and most importantly, be yourself and don't have to be what you're told to be. So be creative and set your own path. And I think that's an exciting thing nowadays.
Thank you, Marcus. And you're a great communicator. I hope people got value from this podcast. We talked about.
I hope so too. I hope it wasn't too political. We could go for hours. and I look forward to coming back, and congratulations again on such a successful podcast and so many people.
We'll do more.
Wonderful. Thanks.